Hello and welcome to Techies the Talk. I'm Jill. I am one of your hosts, and our other co-host, Neha, are Toastmasters that have been in Toastmasters for a while. And we're going to talk today about table topics or extemporaneous speaking. Have you ever had an opportunity to talk to someone at work that was much more senior than you are? Perhaps you stuttered a little bit because you were flustered? Well, table topics is a great way to practice that skill of thinking on your feet. Neha, have you ever had an opportunity where you've had to think on your feet?
So I was a very introvert. So if anybody asks me a question, I get very like a deer in a headlight. I get very scared if somebody puts me on the spot, even today, and even after being in Toastmasters for so long. Table topics scares me. Over a period of time, you learn how to handle it, but the nervousness is always there for me, even today. Thinking on my feet is not my forte. I have learned that with doing table topics and Toastmasters. You can learn the skill, but yes.
It is a learned skill, but do you find that if you're speaking in your native language that it's easier, or is it English that makes it harder?
I would say both, because now I am translating in my head in English what I'm gonna respond, and it just doesn't come naturally to me to respond when somebody asks me a question. I need time to formulate how I'm going to respond. I need to be able to write it down before I respond. And with table topics, you don't have that much time. Like within 30 seconds, you're responding to the question.
Well, that's true. You don't have time to write it down, but I find if you pause, it's okay. Now, I've never had quite that problem. I've polished how I've been able to answer questions. And I'll be honest with you, table topics has helped me with answering questions in interviews. How many job interviews have you been in where you've been asked a dreaded question? What is your weakness? What is the one thing, whatever it is, something that you just hate to have to answer? And in the last interview that I was in, I was asked, did I know a certain piece of software? Well, I didn't know the software. I had never used it. But being able to draw upon my table topic skills, I was able to answer the question, redirect it, and the people that I was talking to, never realized that I really didn't answer the question they asked. I turned the question around to something that was much more positive. Do you find that you can do that now?
I think the interview questions that are not technical is where I am always very scared. Technical questions I can answer, but when they go to what are your weaknesses or you having worked on this, I think because of Toastmasters, now I am confidently able to respond. And like you said, stir them in the what you know instead of what you do not know. I think one of the skills like I've learned with table topics is talk about what you know instead of if you do not know what the question is, then talk about what you know and make it into a positive experience. That is one skill I've learned from Toastmasters of table topics. But if the same situation was 10 years ago or before I was in Toastmasters, I would just be silent. I wouldn't say a word. I would be like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. That's how I would come across. But with Toastmasters and table topics, now I can answer questions even though I don't know the answer to it.
I find that having that opportunity to practice those skills has helped me. I think probably early on in my career, I lost opportunities for jobs or lost face with people who were more senior than I was because I didn't know how to talk to them. Now, I may not know how to talk to them, but at least I can fake it a whole lot better.
Table topics was a very new concept when I joined Toastmasters. You know, there are organized speeches and then you get feedback in Toastmasters, but I did not know anything like table topics. I have never heard about it. I had never seen it. So when I went to Toastmaster meeting for the very first time, I think I was very pleasantly surprised that there's something called table topics where somebody just asks you a question and then somebody from the audience comes up and responds to it. It's only 1 to 2 minutes, but that 1 to 2 minutes are, from my perspective, very fearsome 1 to 2 minutes when you're talking. But it was a very new concept. I had never experienced anything like that. And the advantages that you mentioned about how you learn how to talk, talk on your feet. I did not know that that is something that Toastmasters offered. Like, I thought it just helped you become a better speaker, you give speeches, but I did not know Toastmasters offered this, something that helps. And I also learned that it's a skill. You can develop it. The more you practice, the more you will get better at it. But it is, if it doesn't come naturally, it is scary. That's what I thought.
I know a lot of people, when they first start out, they think that having to talk for 1 to 2 minutes is terrifying. I was at a meeting a couple of weeks ago and we had a couple of guests, and I was amazed how well they did. Now, they didn't realize that they only needed to talk for a minute or two. And that was the fault of the Toastmasters in the meeting. We didn't educate them beforehand, but they did an amazing job. And just being able to get up and talk when you're called upon, just like that, is a skill. And it's something that, like all skills or all muscles, we have to exercise and learn how to do. But I'd say both of us are fairly good at it, Neha, because here we are, we're talking off the top of our heads. We don't have a script. And we're able to put words together and talk to our audience.
Thank you, Toastmasters. I would say even till date, I do get nervous. But there is another aspect of table topics that I enjoy and I would like to talk about or discuss about is being the table topics master. Like, you are the one asking questions. And that part, I love it. I enjoy it. And because in my head, when I'm table topics master, I want it to be different. Regular table topics master gets 3 or 4 questions and then picks people from the meeting, preferably not the speakers or evaluators for the table topics. But I like to take one step further. I want to make it creative. And that's what makes it interesting for me for table topics. Like, one of the ideas I had was having chocolate stuff on the board with the question underneath. So, or I loved one of the Michelle's idea where she had built a cube, and inside the cube on the different sides, she had a question, and you roll the dice, and then you whatever question the dice has is what you answer. So I love when table topics master come up with this creative way of doing table topics, and that part I enjoy. Do I enjoy answering questions? No,
If the
I
fifth
love
thing.
asking them.
Well,
Yes, out of table topics, I would love to be the table topics master. So, responding.
and Neha does a great job. She really does a great job at being the table topics master. Laurie has joined us now. She is our guest today. Laurie, welcome. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into Toastmasters?
Oh, that's a story all in itself. I actually joined Toastmasters back in 2008. Worked at Little Elm Public Library, and a couple of people came in and said, "We want to start a club." Well, my boss says, "Sure, we can do that." Of course, she never said no to anybody. And the next thing I knew, she came up to me and she goes, "You're joining Toastmasters." I said, "Wait a minute, what is Toastmasters?" No, I don't do that. And this many years later, here I am. I am still in Toastmasters.
Do you find that you regret joining Toastmasters, or after all this time, are you happy that you were forced into it?
It's kind of a two-edged sword. Some of it's like, "Ugh, again," and the rest of it's like, I have improved so much. In fact, a couple of years into it, my mother-in-law came up to me and said, "This has done you a world of good. Your speech has improved so much."
And you
Okay.
probably laughed and didn't recognize how it's improved.
Exactly. It was a gradual event, and it's happened. It has made a difference.
So today we're talking about table topics and how table topics has helped us. Now, we've talked a little bit about receiving a table topics question, and then Neha was just talking about how it was to be the person to come up with those questions in a meeting. Which do you prefer?
I actually prefer answering the questions. I always feel funny asking people questions because I've asked a lot of different styles, different things, and it's not always understood what I'm asking. Therefore, I like answering them better.
With the,
Have you found that it's helped you in your everyday life?
Yes, it has. I've become more succinct. I don't ramble quite as often. Seems like I do, but it usually has a point.
were you
Go ahead, Neha,
scared?
you were going to ask
Very the
something.
first. Were you scared the very first time when you saw table topics, when you were very new to Toastmasters? How did you feel when you joined Toastmasters that you knew nothing about and then you saw, hey, there's something called table topics?
It was scary. Although the group I was in, there were 8 of us in our club at that time, and not many were giving speeches. So we did a lot of table topics, and everybody did them. We didn't have any exceptions. Whoever was in the room did a table topics. And we didn't stand up. We started out doing them sitting around the table doing them so we got more comfortable. Then we started standing in front of the group. So it's eased into it.
You did a
Have
lot
you
of
ever
table
been
topics.
asked a question that you didn't want to answer? How
Oh,
did you
yes.
How did you answer it?
I deflected it. They asked a question, said, "That's an awesome topic, but I have this take on it," and I kind of took it in a whole different direction. And that's kind of a sidestep. It's a wonderful technique to be able to do that within Toastmasters.
Have you ever used it for an interview, maybe, or somewhere else?
Actually, I have used it in an interview. And I've used it in my line of work. I won't say what it was in the interview because that got a little bit, little touchy, shall we say. But I worked as a reference librarian at Little Elm, and I worked the front desk, and I constantly was asked all kinds of questions. And there were some things that we were not allowed to talk about as municipal employees. It's just part of the job. It's just some things you just don't discuss. And I was able to deflect it. And it taught me how to do some deflection and move the topic on to something else.
So I have one question. Is there any technique that you have learned over a period of time while answering table topics, or any techniques that you can give to our listeners if they're doing table topics for the first time, or maybe they just started with table topics? Is there something that you've learned that you could share?
I would say the best technique is to repeat the question back so that you make sure you understand it. Therefore, and while doing that, it gives you a few seconds to figure out how you want to answer it. Because, table topics are a mini speech. You have your opening, your middle, and your close. Therefore, it gives you a chance to come up with an opening, at least, and figure out what you want to say.
That's a really good suggestion.
Yes.
Or
I have
use
a
the power
question
of
for.
pause.
I'm sorry?
I said, or use the power of pause.
Use the power of pause. That's an awesome technique as well.
So I have a question for both of you ladies, and that is, so I have heard a lot of table topics, and how do you make it humorous? That is something I'm not have been able to achieve. Like I've heard people making it so humorous, or it's very, I want to listen to you. How do you do that? That is my biggest weakness with table topics.
Well, you want to go first, Jill?
Go ahead. I think the first thing you have to recognize is that there are different types of humor. And my type of humor tends to be dry. So it may take a little bit for people to get it. It may be after the table topic is over and then they're like, oh, wait a minute. So it may make them think. But I think it is, again, something you have to practice. And you have to relate it to your own personal experiences to make it funny. Now, I can come up with a wealth of funny things about my cats. And you guys saw the tail behind my back. My cats are always around me, and they're always doing ridiculously funny things. So I can always relate it to my cats. But it just depends on what the question is,
Yeah, I agree with that. And I tend to turn the humor back towards us. When things would get rough growing up, we always relied back on humor. So we would try to find the nugget of humor in it. And cats, animals, pets, brothers and sisters, brothers especially, are a wealth of humorous stories.
Mm-hmm.
That's just where I've come from as well. You learn to, it's a lot of it's your personality. How can you do it? What are you comfortable saying? I'm more comfortable making people laugh than to tell a serious story. I learn the punchline frequently because I start laughing before the punchline comes out. That happens a lot.
Some good techniques. I'm going to try brothers. I have a brother. Brother stories.
Brothers.
I have a brother as well. And trust me, I could fill a whole meeting full of stories about my brother. Some of them are funny. Some of them not so funny, but I could probably make them funny.
Yeah. Mine was my brother and my cars. I've done that topic more than once. Yes. And he's fully aware of it too. He says, you have to tell that story again. So.
Absolutely. Your family can always be funny. Now, my father, who passed away almost 20 years ago, we still tell stories about. For instance, at a holiday meal, when all the food ends up on one side of the table and you want something for seconds, my dad always said, eat something close to you. And that has stuck for years.
I have to remember that one. That's a new one.
He would say that every time, and we would just laugh and go on. But it's a way that he sticks with us through our holiday meals, and it makes people laugh.
Yeah, that is a good one.
Neha, I'm sure you have stories like that. No?
The only story I remember is growing up. When you're in a social gathering and everybody talks over each other.
Mm-hmm.
And as a kid, I would ask my mom, who is listening to whom? How do you know who is talking to whom? And what are they saying? And my mom was like, by the end of the day, everybody would have known everything what everybody was saying. It's just, I still can't figure out, like, if so many people are talking, whom are you listening to? So,
I have a story like that too. My sister and I were in high school and we babysat for some people, both of us, so that they could go to a party at my parents' house. And I came home after midnight, it's New Year's Eve, and everybody's standing around the counter in the kitchen and everybody is talking. Not one person was listening.
My mom had two sisters, and they would both talk, and the more they talked, the more excited they would get, and the louder they would get, and the faster they would start talking. Finally, last summer, I was able to catch one of my aunts by herself. And I said, I have a question. When you and Mom and Aunt Bev were all together talking, did you ever listen to what the other ones were saying? And she goes, no. But yet they would answer each other's questions while they were talking. So part of them were listening. That's a learned skill.
Mm-hmm.
It is a learned skill.
We all have those funny stories, and so you can look at your family for that humor.
Mm-hmm.
this table topic has to be humorous, or you think it's about how you answer the question?
I think it's about what the question is, a lot of it is, what is the theme of the meeting? Is it serious? Is it contemplative? Are you doing a series on job interviews? So you want to watch the humor. Throw some in, keep it a little bit light, but you want to be sure that you don't get so far out that you lose context of what you're supposed to be saying or talking about.
I remember sitting in this chair 2 years ago doing an interview for the job that I have today, and one of my cats climbing all over my back. So I'm trying really hard to ignore her. And eventually I just had to say, and you'll have to excuse my cat. She wants to be a part of the interview. And I just went on.
Yeah.
But it made things real. And I think the people that I was interviewing with actually appreciated that. So I think that's the answer to the question, is when you're answering a table topics question, be real, be yourself. And if humor applies, definitely put it in there. And if it doesn't apply, then be sensitive to that too.
Definitely.
Have you ever had a controversial question that you had to answer very tactfully?
Laurie, what about you?
We've had a few, but being in a public facility for the meetings, we try to keep all that tone down because, well, our meetings are literally in a glass room where everyone can see in. So you would put on a good demeanor for other people to join the club. You don't want to have people sniping at each other and going back and forth, because you can hear what's going on, you can see what's going on. So you want to try to keep it at a somewhat of a professional and understanding level. But we had one person who gave a speech on abortion, which became a very controversial thing. And we're like, whenever a speech is given or a table topic is given, we're not here to always look at the content. We're here to look at the mechanism. Did it work? Were you good at what you did? And we don't have to agree with what people say, but we have to keep in mind how the appearance is, and everybody's there to learn. So we treat it like that.
And actually, there's a project where you are supposed to give a speech to a difficult audience. And I have seen where sometimes the audience is very difficult, and sometimes it's just a little difficult.
Right.
So it might be appropriate to give a speech on a controversial topic like abortion. Everybody has their own personal opinions on that.
Right.
In a group for a difficult audience, it might work. But if you're giving it in an everyday meeting where that's not what you're working on, it might not work.
Right. And that carries over to table topics. You need to just be aware of what's being said and how it's being done.
So would it be a good advice to keep the politics and religion out of your answers with the table topics?
To avoid controversy, yes, I would say so. But you still, like Jill has said, you still want to be real. That is
Right.
part of you. That is part of your thoughts. You just have to be sensitive to who you're speaking and who is your audience. What are they
Well, that's
thought?
true.
Mhm.
So
I
even
had
in
the
table
oppor-
topics, you're saying we need to
Even
know
in
our
table
audience.
topics,
Yeah.
in
Okay.
everyday life and in table topics, be sensitive to your audience.
I mean, would you go to a pro-life event and talk about the abolishment of Roe versus Wade and in an agreement with it? I mean, you have to know who your audience is. I
What
had
kind
the
of
opportunity to evaluate a speech, which could have been a table topic, at a meeting that was right after dinner, and this guy was talking about vomiting.
Oh.
And I'm like, "Oh, really?" And that is one of the things I had to say to him. I'm like, okay, topic aside, the mechanics of the speech was great. Okay.
right?
But choose your topic wisely, because here we are, either we've just eaten dinner or we haven't eaten at all and now we don't want to.
Know your audience. Okay, good tip.
A great table topic subject.
I'm just like, okay, not the topic I would have chosen. You know, and I can think of a club that I went to that was very, very political. And it didn't work. The club ended up closing because they offended so many people.
Oh my.
And it's sad that that happened, but the people who were in control of the club didn't recognize that you have to be sensitive to who you're talking to. And if you're trying to grow a club, having different types of people actually is good,
Yes.
because you get different viewpoints and different ideas. And even
Mhm.
table topics brings that in.
Very much.
People from different backgrounds having different life experiences, and table topics brings that into light, and I like that. So I think that table topics is a really nice way to get an insight into somebody's life, like a small window into somebody's life when they're sharing their experiences. So I like that part of table topics. Like I said, I would like to be table topics master, which is the one answering questions.
I'm comfortable with either, but I will say that it has polished my skills and it's helped me learn how to answer questions from people off the fly.
Yes. But then
Also,
I
table
think
topics has helped me learn how to make people talk by asking questions. Because I like making those questions. If I find somebody who is an introvert, I jump in and I ask questions, relevant questions, so that they feel included. They open up slowly. So I love doing that part. Yeah, answering table topics is something I'm still don't have the skill of, like you said, you know how there should be an opening, body, and conclusion, and that is 30 seconds, and then maybe 30 seconds in between. That I haven't mastered the skill of doing opening, body, and conclusion in table topics.
it just takes practice.
And you probably think that you don't, but I think you do. It's one of those things, I think we're our own worst critic. And you
Yes.
probably are a whole lot better than you ever anticipated that you were.
I think
There are some table topics that I like, some of the ones that are more of a game. Though they make you think more, like there's the never ending story. where one person starts it and talks for 1 to 2 minutes like they would in normal, but they're starting a story. The next person has to continue the story. And then the third person has to continue from there. And whoever ends it has to wrap up the story. So you have to pay attention to what everyone is saying. You can't just let your mind wander. Those kind of games in it are actually very useful because they make you listen as well as think ahead.
And thank you. I think I'm going to use that technique the next time I'm a table topics master.
Yeah. We started one where we took, this is your summer vacation. You're camping out at the Big Bend National Park. What happened? And it had to go around the room. And it was so much fun by the time it got to the end. Or a murder mystery. Who done it? There's so many techniques that you can do. That was pretty fun.
And that's where people's experiences come in, because you never know what kind of twist you're going to get.
Exactly.
But that's a great idea. Thank you, Laurie.
Yeah.
I like when the table topics are creative, like a game or something different. Don't just make it very simple where you just have questions and call upon people. I like it when there is some mystery, like, oh, is it going to be me? Are they going to ask me? So I like that anticipation, like, I hope it's not me. I hope it's not me. But I think one thing I've learned in tabletop is when a question is asked, always answer. Think of an answer in your head, even if it's not you.
Definitely. That's a good topic.
Well, I have to say, I took one of your ideas for table topics. I did it intentionally. We had an open house, and the theme was something that was, to me, a little bit dry for table topics. So I took the candy bars, and I actually used the AI tool that Toastmasters offers to help me come up with questions that were pertaining to the theme. Now, I'm not a big AI person. I have my own feelings about that, but I wanted to use the tool to see how it worked. And I actually had 6 or 7 questions that I got from the AI tool surrounding a theme that was all about high Toastmaster excellence. And we had a lot of fun because we used your idea of the candy. Each candy bar had a question with it, and I just called people to come up and pick their favorite candy bar.
That's a good one. Have you seen the ones where someone has the table topics master has a bag, and in the bag they have unusual items, and you reach in, you pull one out, and you pretend that you are 1,000 years in the future. This device came up. What is it? How was it used? Those are hysterical. They add a lot of fun to the group.
So we can do this and have fun and learn great skills while we're doing it.
Definitely.
I remember what I had done was I had gathered different kind of fruits and then said, what would you bake out of it? So if it is an apple, pineapple, plum, what would you bake out of it? Something like that. So that was one of the ways that I did. And then you can just add ingredients and say, hey, rice or anything. What will you cook? Something like that. So I started with the fruits, and I was like, that was the easiest one. Just another way. Like I said, I love being creative with being a topics master, table topics master. So I love coming up with ideas with the game or mystery, like what you said. Done it.
I can see a speech coming out of that. I went to the grocery store and bought fruit for a Toastmasters meeting so that we could. I can see a speech there, Neha, and I think you need to give it.
That would be wonderful.
And then you'd really show your sense of humor.
Yes. What's fun is when you can take a table topic and expand it into a speech.
And there are some that come up, and it's like, I really could use more time to talk about this and things
Maybe-
that happen in your personal life, that you want to
Right.
share.
That's true. Very true.
Well, Laurie, we are so glad that you joined us to talk about extemporaneous, I can't even say the word, extemporaneous speaking or table topics. I may know how to do it. I just don't know how to say it.
Well, I enjoyed it. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, thank you for coming and thank you for sharing your insights with different types of table topics and some techniques that we could use in future. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
All right. Well,
And I'm
goodbye,
looking
everyone.
forward to using some of your ideas for not only giving table topics, but for coming up with ideas as the table topic master.
Well, I'm glad I could help, and I look forward to you taking some of your advice back as well. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.
Yes, the table topics is two-part, giving responses and being a table topics master. We learned a lot of techniques today. So thank you for listening to us. You can find us on Spotify and on YouTube. We are Techies That Talk. If you have any special requests on which you would like to hear any topics in Toastmasters, please leave your comments on Spotify or YouTube, and we would be glad to look at it. Thank you for listening, and be back for the next episode with us, Techies That Talk.
See you soon.
See you.